Are we ready to show?
Yeah.
Uhuru comrades. Yeah, it's very good to be here back in Philadelphia. I don't want to say it's good to be here, but it's good to see comrades and brothers and sisters from the community here at the event. I just want to make everybody aware, we were actually planning to have Sister Danita Bates, who is a parent of students in the Philadelphia public school system. She was going to speak on the struggle that's going on right now against the school closures. And I just got a text from her. She's on her way. She's at City Hall right now. So, so you know, we're going to be getting a presentation from Sister Danita. It's really important that we do so because part of what we want to help people understand through this event is the fact that African people, no matter where we are, we suffer the same colonial oppression. Whether we live in Sierra Leone, South Africa, London, England, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, or Philadelphia, PA. Everywhere you go, African people suffer the same poverty, the same oppression, the same general state of powerlessness. And we as the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party, we understand that the basis, the historical basis of the conditions that we suffer is an attack on Africa by Europe. The reason why Africans are here in the first place is a consequence of an attack on Africa by Europe, where white people left Europe, went to Africa, kidnapped African people, stole our resources, brought it to Europe, brought it to North America, killed all the Indians, stole their land in the process, and developed an entire economy at the expense of the freedom of African people, of the so-called Indians or the indigenous people here in North America. This is the basis of the emergence of the U.S. as is known today, of parasitic capitalism as a world economic system. And it's really important that we understand it because, you know, whether we struggling today, because, you know, all the problems imposed on our lives by the system, whether it be in the form of schools getting closed down, police murdering our people in the streets, unemployment, inability to pay the rent, all these problems that African people experience around the world, if we don't understand that these problems are based on the fact that we've been denied the ability to be a self-governing and self-determined people, then we're going to find ourselves involved in a struggle to reform the same system that's responsible for our conditions of oppression. So we're not interested in reforming capitalism. We're not interested in finding a better way for the Philadelphia public school system to function, because the schools have never functioned in the interest of African people. In fact, the school system as we know it is a colonial education system that was established as a means of reinforcing the ideas of colonialism and just providing you just enough skills necessary for you to be functional on the plantation, on the factory, etc. That's all the schools. Why the hell else would they build a school for Africans to attend in the first place, you know? So for us, the struggle against the school closures, for example, is much larger than just keeping the schools open. It's about transforming schools as we know them into institutions through which our children can learn about their real history, right, as African people, as the givers, the birth givers of civilization and human society. It's about transforming the schools into institutions through which we acquire skills and training necessary to develop our own communities on an economic, political, and social level, how to solve problems in our community, how to relate and interact in a more productive way with one another. These are things that the schools were ever teaching our children, even before they were talking about shutting down the schools, you know? And that's just one example of many that we can point to when we say where African people right now are involved in a lot of different types of struggle against immediate problems that face our people. But we know that none of these struggles can be aimed at simply reforming the system. It has to be an overturning of the system itself. And that is part of the responsibility of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party. Now today, I'm given a very limited amount of time. I'm going to try to give you a lot of information in this condensed amount of time to report to you on what's happening in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a very small country in West Africa. Everybody heard of Sierra Leone, right? Has anybody here not heard of the country called Sierra Leone? Okay. And there's an interesting history behind the country, which I'm not going to go all the way into, but it's important to know that Sierra Leone, much like all of Africa, is the place from which the wealth that we find in the U.S. economy and the European economy, that's where all the wealth comes from. Sierra Leone is one of the places where the world's richest deposits of diamond wealth exist right now. You talk about the diamonds that they sell in the jewelry stores and KB, or whatever they call, Tiffany jewelers, they come from Sierra Leone, right? Bauxite, which is a mineral that comes out of the ground that is used to create steel, like that which this podium was made out of, or cars, etc. That comes from Sierra Leone and other parts of Africa as well. You talk about iron ore, and I'm going to show you like concrete examples of how these resources are taken out of Sierra Leone on a regular basis. But the point is that Sierra Leone is one of 52 African so-called countries that are under constant assault by the US, by Europe, and it's an assault that is based in the need for the US, Europe, and white power as a whole to continue to steal resources to enrich their own economies. That is what is going on in Sierra Leone right now, and as a consequence of that general theft, you find an ongoing war that's being waged against the African community in Sierra Leone and throughout the continent. You may have even recently heard about the what they call the civil war that happened in Sierra Leone, and that is the process out of which this whole Blood Diamond campaign emerged, where they finally, the white people decided that, the problem is that there's some diamonds in Africa that are being taken from the land and causing death of certain Africans, etc. Notwithstanding the fact that every single diamond and all the resources out of Africa are blood diamonds and blood resources, But we're going to talk about that. But the point is that Sierra Leone is also a place in which the Uhuru movement, which is a worldwide international revolutionary organization, which is clear that there will be no freedom for African people until we build a worldwide struggle, a worldwide organization to unite African people around the world to take back the diamonds, the bauxite, the gold, and everything else that's being stolen from us. Sierra Leone is one of the places in Africa in which we are actually engaged in concrete work to build revolutionary organization and bring the masses of the people into that type of struggle. And I'm going to tell you, and you're going to see in this video, the people are ready. The people are ready to resist. They're ready to get organized. It's just a question of being able to provide sufficient training and other certain types of resources necessary to build the type of organization that's going to free us. And that is the reason why myself, as well as other leading members of the African People's Socialist Party, went into Sierra Leone recently, just a few weeks ago. In fact, I just got back last week. This is the reason why we went into Sierra Leone, to engage in a process that we've been involved in for quite a while now, to actually build organization amongst the people there in Sierra Leone. So that was basically the reason why we went in there. Also, it's important to recognize that we have been on the ground in Sierra Leone since 2005, 2006, in the ongoing attempt to build organization amongst the people there. And this recent trip is part of a series of trips that we've made back and forth in the struggle to keep on building organizational capacity up on the ground in Sierra Leone, West Africa. So what I'm about to show y'all is a series of videos that we collected that can give you a first-hand look on the actual conditions that the people experience there in Sierra Leone, West Africa. The first thing I want to show you is videos or footage of the actual conditions that our people face there in Sierra Leone. I think the first video is at a school that, and I wanted to show this in particular because we're going to be talking about the whole education and the question of schools and whatnot. And again, it's important to understand that when we talk about education, when we talk about schools, we're talking about institutions that exist in society for a particular purpose. In any given society, that you will go to, the education system or the schools function for two primary reasons. One is to reinforce the ideas of the ruling forces in that society, to reproduce the ideology that holds that society together and that keeps it moving forward. Now, in a colonial society, in a society built on slavery and colonialism, and war and African and other oppressed people, the schools are responsible for reproducing the ideas that justify the existence of colonialism and slavery. So you go to, Ben Franklin High or Martin Luther King High or Germantown High or whatever, and the colonial schools here are not going to teach you how to make a revolution. They're not going to teach you how to get the diamonds back in the hands of African people, etc. They're going to teach you how this system is in fact good for African people, how George Washington was the founding father and Thomas Jefferson, put out these lofty ideas about democracy. The schools function to justify the existence of slavery and colonialism. Now that's one aspect of the responsibility of the schools, which doesn't just impact on the African and oppressed people, but it's also there to win the general white population to the ideas of the ruling class. The other function of the education system of the schools is to provide the productive forces in the society with just enough training, skills, etc. to be productive for the exploiting class in that society. Not necessarily exploiting class, but to train the productive forces in the society on how to produce, right? And again, in a system based on slavery and colonialism, the schools, if they allow for slaves to go to school, if they allow for the colonized people to go to the schools will teach the slave how to pick cotton more efficiently, or how to work the machines in the factory more efficiently, how to essentially produce more wealth and profit for capitalism. That's what the function of any single school you go to throughout this country and the world. If it is a school that is sanctioned by imperialism and imperialist governments around the world, then that is what the school is going to do. So that's important for us to understand. Now, in places like Philly and Sierra Leone, and where you have large amounts of African people, imperialism is confronted with a contradiction. Because although it is necessary for Africans to make the white people rich, the schools are not always, as they exist, are not always the most effective or strategic way to do that, right? For a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get into. Therefore, here we find the schools being transformed into prisons, right? Through which even greater rates of exploitation impact African people. So as opposed to giving you a job after you graduate from school and making, $5, $6, $7 an hour, whatever they're paying, it is much more profitable for imperialism to simply shut down a school and open up a school in the prison where African children are being contained right now. And not only are Africans being taught colonial ideology, but they're also being taught how to be more productive for white power. And it just so happens that the factory is right there in the prison where the school is too. Right. So that is part of the contradiction that we're dealing with in terms of the struggle against school closures and the expansion of prisons and whatnot, and why they're closing down more schools and building more prisons, because that is the most strategic process for imperialism. In Sierra Leone, we got a situation where any means of production, African workers as a whole have been separated from any means of production in relationship to the productive process. And white power has designed it that way. The only real function that African workers have for white power on the continent of Africa is to learn how to use a shovel to dig up the dirt or the diamonds or whatever is in the dirt and put it on a train and take it off to Europe. At the point that the dirt is on the train, there's no need for African labor, and therefore there's no need really for an educational system under that type of economic order. So therefore, in countries like Sierra Leone, which is a government that's led by the US and UK imperialism, there is no school system at all. And in fact, for an African to be able to get a basic education, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, you gotta pay tuition to a private school, you know, which is not the type of resource that most Africans even have. So you got that type of contradiction at work right now in Sierra Leone. And I want to show y'all some real quick video. Let's show the video footage. First of all, this is a drive through what is known as Freetown. Actually, this is a suburb. This is a suburb of Freetown, Sierra Leone, called Allentown. And this is a very short video, but I just wanted to show you. This is, you know, generally what the whole Sierra Leone looks like. Severe form of underdevelopment, you know. And this is the same place where the world's best diamonds, bauxite, coltan, you know, all types of mineral wealth comes from every day. But as you can see, the conditions here in Sierra Leone are not unlike that of deep West Philly or North Philly or any other oppressed African community throughout the world. So that is Sierra Leone. I just wanted to show that to y'all real quick. The next video I want to show you is, and you can better play out the end. But this is, yeah, that's Sierra Leone. That's any given block in any given city or neighborhood in the country. Now the next video, this is a school. And we had an interview with the principal of the school. It's a private school in the sense that you have to pay tuition for your child to go there. Now, there's a lot we could have showed you, but this for the sake of time, we're about to go into the computer room in the school. And you know, I'm showing you this as one, you know, example of the serious theft and ongoing rape that is happening in Africa right now. Where the computer room, that's the principal's office right there, the teacher's lounge, I believe. You know, and then here we go around the corner to the computer room, and as you can see, there are no computers in the computer room. They call it that with aspirations that one day there will be computers. Now, again, I want to keep on hitting home the fact that this is the same place where diamonds, bauxite, iron ore, coltan, flowers, you know, coffee, all types of resources that make white power very rich come on a regular basis. And I'm going to show you firsthand with the camera how the resources are stolen. But as you can see, it ain't no computers in the computer room, you know? There is no viable educational system. Even, you know, the educational system that white power uses here does not exist. And we're seeing the educational system in African communities here in Philly traveling in the same direction. So I just wanted to show you that. We can go ahead and go to the next video. This next video is, this is the, pause it real quick. You got, you know, like in some schools, you got shop or vocational training, and that's something that they cut in the budget. That's one of the first things that they cut the budget for in the school system here in Philly. They did that for strategic reasons because, again, they don't want African people to have any type of capacity or ability to produce in our own interests. And the vocational training that used to come up out of the education system was one of the few actually useful instruments that the public school system had to offer. Because if you learn how to fix cars or manufacture this and that, then at least you can take those skills and use it for the development of your community. You know what I mean? As opposed to other aspects of the school curriculum where they're teaching you lies and about history and what they call history. So come on in, bro. Come on in. So this right here is what they aspire to one day become the vocational, the workshop. You know what I mean? So play this video real quick, comrade. So yeah, this is, you know, one day this is going to be shop class. But again, the resources are non-existent through which the shop class vocational training can be provided. Turn it up real quick.
Which we want to do so as to improve the present condition of the school, because it has no library, it has no laboratory. So these are the areas. So we still have places here where we could put up those things when we have them in the future. So that's why, but it all belongs to the school, and I want people to know about it.
You know, we just, when we came from the airport, Comrade showed us the bauxite mining that's happening on shore in the port. And bauxite is used to create steel and metal, you know, that should be, you know, that's part of the industrial process that should be happening.
That should be happening
right here in Africa.
Yes, you know? Yes. And just as I was also explaining to you, now it's an unfortunate situation because we hoped that maybe they would have done the processes here and take the iron ore. But now what African minerals does, it takes the earth itself away. Why they're taking it away, nobody still knows, and nobody asks questions. So we want to know why is it that they're taking the earth away?
What he's talking about is a really important question that's being discussed here. I don't know if you can hear it through the accent, but basically what's being said, we talk first of all about how one day this particular garage is going to be, the beginnings of vocational training. And one of the fundamental responsibilities of the African Revolution is to not only take back the resources that are being stolen from us, but to also build the capacity to industrialize Africa, right? Meaning that the raw materials, which are the rightful property of African people in the form of raw irons, diamonds, bauxite, whatever you may have, petroleum, oil, not only do we have a right to control those resources in their raw form, but we also have to engage in a process to industrialize Africa, meaning we should be able to build factories where we can transform that bauxite into steel and to create cars and whatnot, to use that iron ore in our own interests, to transform the materials in such a way that actually benefits the African economy and African people as a whole. So that's part of what the struggle is about. And again, that's the last thing that white power wants to see, because the more industrialized and developed the African economy becomes, the more the European and the parasitic capitalist economy declines, and that's essentially what's happening right now when you talk about the crisis of imperialism. We talk about how these banks in Europe and throughout North America are closing down, and they talk about economic crisis all the time, but the reality is that that crisis is based on the fact that oppressed peoples all over the world are challenging, they are saying that no more can the US and Europe just come and steal our oil from Afghanistan or Iraq or Venezuela, etc. And this is causing the economic crisis that imperialism is now suffering. Now, our struggle is to get back our resources so we can engage in our own process to industrialize Africa. That is what the struggle is all about. And it begins even on the basic level, the work that the Uhuru movement, primarily in the form of the All African People's Development Empowerment Project, which we will talk about shortly, is involved in right now. Now, the brother was also talking about how the imperialists are literally taking all of the dirt, basically, out of Africa. It used to be a point where they would even provide employment to some Africans so that, the dust, the soil from which iron ore and other minerals are taken, there'd be some type of process to refine it in Africa. But what the imperialists began to find out is that it's much more profitable just to take all the dirt, take it all to Europe. Because first of all, you never know what they might find in it. Even though they come under the auspice of taking iron ore deposit, you might find some diamonds or bauxite or who knows what else, And so that is part of why they're now taking all of the soil in literally African land out of Africa. We're gonna watch the next video, show this next video that will actually show you the process through which the imperialists are stealing, not that one.
I don't know if you can see it.
Go to the next one. Yeah, my bad. The next one, what we're about to watch right here is the freight trains that they fill up. That one. Yeah, we call it Getaway train. So play this video, turn down the sound. So this, what you're watching right here, this is one train out of dozens that go in and out of the mainland of Sierra Leone on a 24/7 basis. I don't mean they don't take no breaks. They got at least 10 trains just like this. This train has 110 cars. Each one of those cars is filled with 78 tons of dirt that is filled primarily with iron ore, but again, you never know what you're gonna find in it, right? And this process is happening on a regular, ongoing basis. That's one of the few African workers you'll find tied to the process. If you're gonna get a job in this process, it's primarily gonna be digging up the dirt, and putting it on the train if you're African. And that's why they don't got no schools, because they have a need to educate African people to dig up dirt, right? So this is just one of many examples, and this is just one country. One particular this dirt is taken, but this is happening throughout the entire continent of Africa. 54, so-called countries where this same process is occurring, you understand? So this is a profound contradiction, but the reality is that all of this wealth, and these are the engines, we're gonna let the actual, I'll show you the soil, but all this wealth This is the wealth that could feed all of Africa. You know, you talk about in a city like Philly, where the average African man between the ages of 35 and 50, according to the Daily News, will never work again in his life. That's what the white people are saying in their own ruling class publications. But meanwhile, this is your resources. You know what I mean? This is not white power's shit. You know, this is our iron ore and diamonds and other mineral wealth that should be it is the rightful property of African people, but it's being stolen from us. And we're gonna talk about exactly how they do it, because it's not just like the white man has the ability to come in and just say, get out the way, niggas, I'm gonna take your dirt. I mean, there's, you know, neo-colonial governments that work in cooperation with white power to make this happen, and we're gonna talk about what that means, but this is 78,000 tons plus of land, soil full of bauxite, iron ore, and all types of other resources. Go to the next video, because we're gonna show you what the next stage in this theft is. And they got the nerve to call you a thief, right? They got you going downtown to 13th and Philbert. No, not that one, but the one before it called Bolt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So after they put all the soil, that one. After they put the soil, go ahead and play. I got you.
From the ship to the barge.
So they take it. Okay,
They take it
so
from the barge.
The train will put it on the barge.
And the barge take it to the ship.
And it goes off to Europe.
Gone to Europe. Now you can see the bucket coming down. So grab it from the barge onto the vessel.
So, you know, yesterday we got footage of the imperialists stealing our iron ore deposits. And they put it on the train. And the train, where exactly did the train go to?
Well, the train goes to somewhere they call Ferembea. Yeah, Ferembea, the port.
And the port?
Yes.
From the port, they put it on the barge.
On the barge, from the barge, they come down,
They put it on the boat.
down sea.
And from the boat, they down, straight to Europe.
Yeah,
Never to be seen by Africa again.
Exactly. Never to be seen.
Unless it's in the form of some product that's made out of the iron, they're gonna charge us.
Now they take this one to Europe.
Yeah.
They do it on the rivers, make their material,
Yeah.
come with it back to Africa. Then we pay for it yearly than it costs us originally.
Yeah.
So this is capital.
We gotta buy back our own
Exactly.
That's what we call stick up. Extortion.
So
By the imperialists.
this still slavery on the making.
Yeah.
Slavery on the making. Something that we are against.
So what is NPW gonna do about it? What is NPW and ASI gonna do?
We started making the noise and we'll continue to make some noise. Now we intend to go to different mining sites and tell the people that they have to mobilize their resources.
Right.
They have to mobilize forces.
Yeah.
But the property is their property. The land belongs to them.
Yeah.
So we against imperialism, we must control our resources and we must make our roads.
Right on.
Those are the things
We're with you.
Yeah.
We're with you.
Yeah.
Around the world, we are with you.
We're gonna say
One Africa,
one nation.
one nation.
One Africa. Uhuru.
Alright, so, you know, that's how it goes down. And this is happening on an ongoing basis. They don't take no breaks. There's at least 10 trains. They get the trains going in, fill it up with the dirt, take it out, put it on the boat, repeat the process all the time. You know what I mean? It's estimated that within the next 10 years, they would have taken 250 million tons of soil out of Sierra Leone alone, you know? So that is parasitism. This is the basis of the existence of parasitic capitalism. Saying capitalism to say it's good for us, this is what capitalism is based on. And this is the reason why African workers all over the world don't even have the ability to feed our children, heal our sick, house ourselves, etc., because of this ongoing theft of our resources. So we're going to talk about the resistance, because the reality is that you know, you can never have a situation in any society where that type of theft of resources, that type of exploitation goes on without needing to have an entity, a force of repression in place to make sure that parasitism continues, right? Who in their right mind would just get on a slave ship and go work for free for 500 years? The slave master requires an organization of repression. People with guns and whips and other instruments of violence and coercion to maintain the status quo, to make sure that the workers, the people from whom the wealth is being stolen, do not have the ability to take back what is being stolen from us. This entity is called the state, right? The state is an organization of repression and violence and coercion that emerges anytime in human society when there's a split between those who have, those who do not have. the state that functions in most places in the world today, the state that most African people in the world have a relationship to, is the state that is under the control of those who are stealing our resources. It is what we call the colonial state. It is the state that exists to maintain a system of colonialism. Colonialism being this economic and political relationship that we're discussing right now. A relationship between white power and African and other oppressed people, right? A relationship where somebody that ain't from Africa will come to Africa and take all of your resources and take over your government to make sure that you don't have the ability to prevent them from taking your resources. That is what the colonial state does all over the world. It does it in Sierra Leone, it does it in north, west, south, Philly, and everywhere else throughout this country. The state, the police, the prisons, the courts, the army, the navy, every other apparatus of the U.S. imperialist state, European imperialist state, they all function for the same purpose. Ain't no way around it. It ain't no "in God we trust." I know when you go to court, they got the sign hanging up talking about "in God we trust." The law don't got nothing to do with no God or who they trust. It's about an institution that is in place to maintain that parasitic relationship between white power and African people. That's all. That's it. And so I struggle in terms of taking back these resources. A large part of our struggle is concentrated in the struggle to take power over the state, so that the police, the prisons, the courts, the armies, the navies, and every other instrument of coercion that is in place to maintain the status quo will function in the interest of African people, so that the state, in terms of African people, and I struggle for liberation, would not be running around murdering African people, or locking us up for trying to survive. The state will be targeting those forces who are stealing millions of tons of bauxite, iron ore, etc. from our communities, that are taking all types of resources in the form of court fines and garbage recycling fines and all this nonsense that the colonial government and this system is taking from our community on an ongoing basis. That is what the role of the state in the control and the leadership of the African community must do. And much of our work is designed to organize people, or African people around the world, to get that type of power in our own hands. You understand? And so what we're going to watch next is a very clear demonstration of how imperialism, parasitic capitalism, and what we call neo-colonialism, which is white power and blackface, how it all functions in the interests of white power. So what we're going to watch right now, I'm going to show this yet. There's a small town in Sierra Leone called, well, not small, but it's a town called McCaney. Outside of McCaney, there's a village known as Motoki, where there's a vast territory of land, which is very fertile land, where literally, if you drop anything, I heard comrades talking about the garden that's being built in North Philly, so y'all can relate to this. If you drop any kind of seed in this land in Motoki, then some gonna grow without even doing nothing. It's very fertile land in this place called Motoki. Now, since colonial days, what they call colonial days, since the white man first came to Sierra Leone, and Africans have been denied the ability to develop our own economy, there's a very large sector of the African population throughout the continent known as the peasantry. Now, peasantry, in a political sense, is a sector, a large sector of society, and in this case, an African society, where the people, the only means of survival for the people is to live off the land, right? There's no jobs and things like that, and of course, they don't got no hookup with the white people to work in the government. The only way that the peasantry survives is living off of the land. That is essentially what the peasantry is, right? But the problem that the peasantry, like all of the African nation, is confronted with is the fact that the white people always want to take over the land. They always want to expand their power and influence and use the land for its own interest. In Motoki, you have this very fertile land, which up until recently was essentially untouched in a certain kind of way by white power. And so up until this point, the peasantry in Motoki was using the land for subsistence farming. They would grow cassava and yams and greens and rice and things like that to feed themselves and the community as a whole. However, and sometimes sell the surplus that they don't need to eat. But recently, the white people discovered that, oh, it's this very fertile land in Motoki. We need that land. A particular company called ADX Petroleum, you can Google it, ADDAX Petroleum, which is a company based out of Britain, UK. They said, you know what, we want that land because we as ADX, we involved in the fuel business. What we do is we make fuel to sell to airline companies and car companies to run shit, you know. And we are right now, we looking to build or to produce ethanol, which is is used primarily for airplane fuel. So ADX sees this land in Motoki, and they say we want that. So they go and they talk to the Uncle Tom sellout ruling party in Sierra Leone, known as the All People's Congress, and they say, look, nigga, we want that land. So basically, show us the way, and hook it up so we can take that land, and we'll pay you a Mercedes-Benz and let you marry a white woman, and so you don't have no problems. But we want, you know, that land. So that is basically what led to the land of Motoki being taken away from the peasantry, and now it's under the control of ADX, right? Now, the people who used to be able to live off the land in Motoki, no longer can they grow cassava and yams and rice and collard greens to live. Now, the only way to survive is to work for ADX on that land. At the same time, ADX ain't paying them, right? They're not paying them like 25, 30 cents a day, which even in Sierra Leone ain't a whole lot to survive on, you can imagine. So that is the situation that African workers, particularly in Motoki, are confronted with right now. Now you have a situation where the people, much like in other mineral mines throughout Africa, I don't know if y'all heard, because there's a lot of stuff going on where there's similar situations happening all over the place, where these African workers that are forced to work for ADX, they began to strike. They like, we don't agree and approve of this relationship we have with ADX. We want to get organized for power over our own lives. We want better pay. We want better working conditions. And therefore, we're going on strike until these demands are met. So what we're about to show you right now is a strike, a meeting, one of the many meetings that was held, where the workers were presenting their demands to the company and to the government that acts as the company's representative. So I want to show this video, and then we're going to say a little bit more about what it represents.
But as it is, in kind of new.
Comrade, go fast forward to 3 minutes and 25 seconds. My bad.
I have you from God. We validate those
325.
Right.
So pause it before you play.
So we never stop now. We even want to enter there from there.
That's cool. Now, this comrade is speaking right now. This is a member of the African People's Socialist Party in NPDOM. His name is Michael Morengi. And Michael, he's a really dynamic organizer. What he's about to do, this is in the middle of the strike meeting between the workers and the company and the government, Uncle Tom's. And the NPDOM and the ASI had the ability, we was able to organize our way into the situation because we recognize that in the final analysis, even though the strike is good, but it's not enough just to hold a strike demanding better pay and conditions. The real struggle is for seizure of power, to overturn the system that gives forces like ADX the ability to take the land in the first place. And so we wanted to bring that, you feel that, right, bro? We wanted to bring that analysis.
I was doing that the whole time.
Yeah. So we wanted to bring that analysis to the people, to the workers. Because that is, and I want to say this real quick, when we talk about the role of the African People's Socialist Party and revolutionaries in general, we're not just activists, right? We're not just out here to hold demonstrations and marches, but our response, because the people can do that. The people don't need so-called activists and organizers to hold a march or, you know, a rally and whatnot. The people need revolutionaries for theory and science, right? To help the people understand the laws of social development and how to really identify what the fundamental problem is, right? It's kind of like you have a cold, and if you listen to the white people, then you're gonna find yourself taking, you know, Sudafed and NyQuil all day long. But until, you know, you get to the root of the problem, what is actually causing the cold in the first place, then you ain't never gonna get rid of that illness, right? So it's kind of like that, where we need organization of revolutionaries that have a very deep understanding of the real basis of the problems that African people found ourselves organizing around all the time, all over the world. So our responsibility was not to show the people how to organize a strike, because as you're going to see in this video, they didn't need us to do that. They organized a very large meeting without the leadership of the revolutionaries. But what the people need revolutionaries for is the theory, to help them understand how to struggle for the power, how to resolve the fundamental contradiction, you understand? How to kill the germ that's causing your runny nose in the first place. So that was the basis of our intervention in this meeting. So this comrade here, his name is Michael Marengi, and he was able to get the microphone, because he's a good organizer. I really like this brother. He was able to basically introduce us, and he's announcing how we building this worldwide revolutionary movement to unite African workers all over the world. And as you're going to see, the people was feeling that, kind of like how you was feeling it. So go ahead, Harry, show that.
If you go past with of God and international support on this, we will do it. We get to partners and when they work with me for the liberation of the African working class. We get some people that when they come up from UK, some that are the US, they don't come up, then they are with me. And then they need for me to move on to this for liberating and the suffering so that they go. Look, some of them there, so they move on out here. Uhuru movement. Now the US. So we can observe and see what they are happening because of the
So that was the people's response to the idea and the actual presence of comrades, brothers and sisters from outside of Sierra Leone coming to unite in the same struggle. That's what the people was going wild for. That's in contrast with the way these Uncle Tom, I don't know if you got a chance to observe, but those people sitting down, that was the police and the government officials who essentially were acting as agents of the company ADEX, and the whole basis of this meeting was the government was trying to get the workers to go back to work, you know, without even addressing the demands of the people. So you and the people, they was booing them and all that. And then when they hear the fact that revolution is coming, we talking about building a worldwide revolutionary struggle, you saw the response of the people. Very profound, very profound. But again, and so we want to show the next video right there. Now as okay, yeah, which one is that? Okay, so now this is, now what happened after that, the Uncle Toms, they shut down the meeting. Because even with what you saw Michael and the brother Fenty put out, even in response to that brief statement, the government, they couldn't respond to it at all. They shut down the meeting. Literally, they shut down the meeting. If we had time, I would show you how they hopped in their Range Rovers and sped off and whatnot. They couldn't respond to the real demands from the people. That's the significance of revolutionaries. Because the government didn't have no problem organizing a meeting as long as the workers were functioning under the leadership of the union. You understand? Because the union doesn't have the ability to call for and make a revolution. In fact, unions as organizations, if they are led up to their own leadership, that they are really instruments to which imperialism and capitalism, strengthen themselves. Make it more tolerable for the workers to exist under exploitation and oppression and whatnot. That's the problem with unions in the first place. They exist with the assumption that there will always be a system based in workers and bosses. And the only real question is, how can we make a situation where the slave essentially can, not, really mind. Like Malcolm X used to talk about how, they give you the Novocaine, right? And even though you're bleeding to death, you don't feel it because you got this drug. And that's essentially what unions as such are in place to do. To obscure the real class contradictions that exist between the workers, the ones who produce all the wealth, and the capitalists, the bosses, that don't do anything but own all the wealth that was created by the workers. So we don't got no confidence in unions, and it's interesting because this guy that you saw kind of like trying to take the microphone from Michael, you saw him? That was the union organizer. And at the same time, he was trying to get the mic, he was running back to talk to the government, like they was telling him, you better get this shit under control, this is not what we had planned on, you know what I mean? And so that was very, crystal clear in terms of the contradiction that we're talking about. It was a profound form of political education. But again, the people, the workers didn't need the ASI and NPW to show up to show them how to organize a strike, clearly. But they did need NPW and the ASI to show up to expose these class contradictions and to point the way forward. So that is the significance of what we do there and all over the world. Now what we're about to see here is a concrete manifestation of that type of leadership. So after the Uncle Toms fled the scene, we was able to pull the workers back together and hold a meeting on our own terms. And this is an excerpt of the statements that we were able to make. Show that.
Break down for talk on the interest. So over to you, please. Touch one, touch all. Touch one, touch all. Touch one, touch all. That's the spirit that you have. And I just want to say first how we feel honored and privileged to see this beautiful resistance. What you're doing is just so beautiful. Beautiful. I will wish every African around the world can see what you're doing, because we are tired. You are tired, I'm tired, we're tired in Sierra Leone, we're tired in the Congo, we're tired in South Africa, we're tired in the US, we're tired in Brazil, and we're tired in Europe to live like no human beings. Nobody treats us as human beings, nobody. And nobody's going to treat us human beings until we force everybody to treat us as human beings. So the future is in resistance, is in a struggle. I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, nobody's doing us a favor. Nobody can come here and tell you they're doing you a favor. It's the opposite. You, the African workers, we are doing everybody a favor. We build England, we build first, we build America, we build Belgium, we build the whole world economy. The whole world economy is on your shoulders. It's on the shoulders of African workers in Sierra Leone, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in the United States, everywhere. We, the black workers, we build the world economy. Only thing we say now, we want an economy for ourselves. We want a free economy for ourselves, so that our children can also have a future, just like the children of Chinese, Japanese, Americans, British, French, everybody else. That's what the struggle is all about, for the future for our children.
but nobody's going to give us the future, as I said, until we achieve power. We are involved in the struggle for education, the right to have a health care, the right to have a decent housing, the right to have a nice road. This is the struggle we're involved in. This sitting demonstration is a part of a wider struggle. The struggle is taking place here in Sierra Leone, also in South Africa. You can hear me naming other countries. The reason I'm naming other countries, I want my people here to realize the struggle is not just about Sierra Leone. We are involved here against the British company, African Minerals. The Chinese are here, they are all over Africa. The French are all over Africa. What I'm trying to say, everybody we are involved in, everyone who's against us has an African plan. We cannot win if we do not have an African plan. That's why I want everyone here to realize. That's why I'm here with my comrade from the US. I live in the UK because we want everyone to realize here, you need an African plan. We need to win. For us to win, we must have an African plan. What do we mean by African plan? We mean that the struggle for Sierra Leone is a part of overall struggle to build a new Africa. The Chinese have an African plan. The British have an African plan. The French have an African plan. The United States government has an African plan. You, the workers, also need to have an African plan. We have a government in this country, just like we have a government everywhere in Africa. These governments are not our government. They are government for the multinationals. They are government for a tiny elite. We call them the African petit bourgeoisie. It's their government. So the workers must have what we call a new consciousness. We call that consciousness an African internationalist consciousness. That's why we say touch one, touch all. It means that for us to be free, for us to be on top of our economy, we need to have an African government, as Kwame Nkrumah wants it to do. Your work, what you're doing today, is a continuity of the work of Kwame Nkrumah, Malcolm X, Lumumba, those Africans who loved you, who loved Africa, and they were killed. So this is a struggle of a great significance. Brothers and sisters and common who are here, I want us to realize that. Let's build the African plan. Let's build organizations that unite African workers in Sierra Leone, in South Africa, in the Congo, in the US. That's the job I'm involved in. That's the job Papa Diop is involved in, and my community from Sierra Leone. We realize for us to win, we need an African plan. African plan. And it will not happen if we don't make African revolution. It might sound far. Nobody, the mosquitoes will not leave you alone until you eradicate the mosquitoes. Is that right? For us to win that fight, we need to build our organization. We call that the African Socialist International. It's an organization to put the African workers in power. When the workers are in power, you don't need to invite anybody to come and listen to our grievances. Because you will be in power. You do what you want to do. As long as you know this power, we will always invite other people to say, see, you give me the right, you feed the world. Why do you want to have right for anybody else? Take power. Be the government. Workers' government. That's what Africa needs. Workers' government. That's the solution. You seize the power. That's my interest for you. And I will leave here, going back to England, where we're going to organize in solidarity with your struggle. We're going to put flyers, leaflets on the streets of the London. So we're going to send press releases. We're going to have meetings. We're going to put that on the internet. So people know Africa is a way. Africa is on the right, and nobody can stop it. Nobody can stop Africa, and nobody can stop the unity of African workers around the world. Thank you so much for listening to what I was saying. All power to the people! All power to the people! All power to the African workers! All power to the African workers! That's the only way. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Uhuru is a Swahili word, it means freedom. And Comrade Luigi, Michael, myself, and others here are part of this movement known as the Uhuru movement. We say Uhuru because freedom must be on the minds of African people all of the time. So I want to again greet you with the word Uhuru. As Secretary General of the Way as the President of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, we want to express our complete unity and solidarity with the strike that's happening right here in Bikini and in Moroki, and to say that African workers around the world have a right to be in control of our own resources, have a right to be in control of our own labor. Brother Louise spoke on everything that needs to be stated. All I want to say is that I represent an organization that is prepared to organize African people around the world to unite with the struggle here in Sierra Leone, so that you do not have to struggle alone. And we are calling on you as Africans in Sierra Leone to unite with the struggle of African workers in the US, in South America, throughout all of Africa and Europe. Because only when we unite as one Africa, one nation, that is the only way that we will succeed in any struggle that we are involved in. It is easy for them to isolate us if we just see our struggle as one that is happening in Sierra Leone. But if they have to deal with African resistance in South Africa, if they have to deal with African resistance in Paris, in London, England, in New York City, in Los Angeles, and around the world, they cannot crush that type of resistance. And so we are here today to say that we are committed to the struggle, to build one organization to unite all. So that is that's the work that we involved in right there. Really powerful process that we involved in. I want to first of all recognize Comrade Danita Bates, Uhuru Danita He's one of our featured speakers on the program. Hopefully we have time to get Danita on. But I don't want to leave you without saying that that is the fundamental struggle that we involved in terms of one, building a movement all over the world where African people unite in a coordinated fashion, not only a strike to get better pay and whatnot, but we got to organize for power. And that is the responsibility of the revolutionary organization, to organize Africans all over the world to understand how to get power in our own hands. As long as we doing our work in Philly without recognition of this only being the Philly front of the international African revolution, it's not as though we can solve any problem for African people in a permanent way if we just see our struggle as one that's happening here in Philly. The work we do here in Philly is part of a worldwide revolutionary process to overturn this system that was founded on our enslavement and on colonialism, etc. So that is the struggle that we involved in right now. And our struggle right now here in Philly and throughout the world, primarily outside of Africa, and on the continent of Africa as well, is to actually build organization. Because none of this work is going to happen on its own. It's not like revolution going to just fall out the sky one day and people going to wake up and I don't know what people think is going to happen, but it ain't going to happen like that. Revolutions are made. Revolutions are led and organized by revolutionaries and revolutionary organization. You can look in all of the history of human society, and anytime you saw a revolution, you best believe there was a revolutionary organization made of dedicated men and women who were convinced that there's no way forward without making a revolution, organizing the mass of the people to overturn the system. It happened in Cuba, China, Russia. Any revolution that you want to point to, there was a revolutionary organization. And the African Revolution ain't no different. And that is our responsibility as the African People's Socialist Party and NPDUM is to build that type of organization. I want to step off, but I want to say that the party is an organization made up of the best sons and daughters of Africa. And when we say the best sons and daughters of Africa, I'm talking about that sector of our community, the advanced detachment of the African working class that is convinced that our sole purpose in life, the reason for our existence, is to solve the problems of the revolution. So if we buy an iPhone, for example, we use it to record the struggle, you know what I mean, and put it on YouTube for the people to see. If we wake up, we think about how we're going to make this work happen. We solving the problems of the revolution. That is who the party is. That's not to say we perfect and we do our work perfectly all the time, but we are guided by that aspiration to lead that struggle to make a revolution. We know that imperialism is highly organized. They don't just take our resources by happenstance, but they have a highly organized capacity to make that stuff happen. They got forces with military capacity that are in place to make sure African people don't get organized. Therefore, we must get organized in an even more organized fashion to defeat our oppressors. And that is the work of the African People's Socialist Party, to bring the masses of African people, the best of our people, into this type of revolutionary organization. It requires commitment and discipline, but at the end of the day, there's no, in my view, there's no other feeling of gratification that goes beyond the task of serving the people and making a revolution. At the same time, the party has established the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, which is the mass organization of the party. Because we recognize that right now, you walk out in the street, walk up Lancaster Avenue right now, and ask somebody, what is your position on, the parasitic exploitation of our resources in Sierra Leone? I mean, people will look at you like you're crazy, right? But the reality is that even as the people may not be interested in an overt discussion about how to make a socialist revolution, the people are impacted by all the problems that's being caused by imperialism in their lives every day. The people getting murdered by the police, schools, if they're not getting shut down, they criminalizing and abusing our children in the schools that's open. The hospitals are pumping our veins up with poison that they call medicine. I mean, all types of contradictions impact on the lives of the people on a regular basis. So the people have an interest in getting organized to solve those problems. And the party created NPDOM as the mass organization, the organization that gives the people the ability to participate in anti-colonial struggle, to participate in a revolution. Even though they may not be revolutionaries themselves, but at the point they join NPDOM and they come to that rally, march, demonstration, or forum, and they receive a certain type of political education, so even while they're struggling for justice, for cheesy, or something like that, they get a deeper understanding as to why it is that the police get away with murdering cheesies every day in this city and in this country. So NPDOM was created as a gateway through which the people can become part of the revolution itself. And as the crisis of imperialism, the economic and political crisis of imperialism deepens, the more the masses of the people are going to come to NPDOM. Not just NPDOM, but the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project. I wasn't able to show you a lot of footage, but the party also created APDEP as another front, another mass organization that gives the people the ability to participate in the development of Africa and the African economy right now. Comrades was talking about the community garden that's happening in North Philly. That needs to be tied to the APDEP process, because all over this country, we are struggling to not only build community gardens, but to do so in a fashion that we begin to develop an a liberated African economy to solve the problems of how we're going to eat after the white people decide that they don't want to give you no more food stamps or whatever else we rely on to do so. So we're going to have to build a capacity for what we call dual and contending power with the government and with the state itself. So part of that work means to build APDEP. The community garden should not just be a garden in itself, but it should be tied to APDEP so that the people can gain an understanding of what's going to permanently solve the problem of how to feed African people as a whole. And APDEP is doing all types of crazy, incredible work in Sierra Leone right now, where 75 out of, I think, every 1,000 African women, maybe more than that, will literally die in the process of giving birth to their children. The hospitals are non-existent. African women are actually flocking to the birthing clinic that APDEP opened up, because there's no death that happens when African women give birth to their children in APDEP's nursing clinic, as opposed to the so-called hospitals in Sierra Leone, where you're better off having your child in the woods, in the bushes somewhere, than going to one of them hospitals in Sierra Leone. You know what I mean? So APDEP was created as a very important component of the party's strategy to, again, give the people the ability to have a relationship with the revolution. So a sister who is pregnant and wants to make sure her child is born healthy may not be interested in talking about socialist revolution, but she wants to make sure that she can give birth to her child, and through joining and participating in APDEP's program, she achieves a concrete relationship with the revolution itself. And in that process, APDEP conducts political education like this one. So that sister develops an African internationalist consciousness, begins to understand that she has a responsibility to participate in the struggle to overturn the system itself. I understand the time is running. So that is the party strategy. And I want to say that because it's important to understand that all the work of NPDOM, APDEP, the Solidarity movement, which we haven't even discussed really, but all of this work is designed to make a revolution. It's not designed to make Philadelphia a better place to live in. It's not designed to make a better Philadelphia Police Department, or how to simply keep the schools open and that's going to solve the problem. You know what I mean? In fact, the problem began when they forced us to go to the schools that are teaching our children lives. When the problem began when we met white power and when it imposed everything that is in our lives right now that is causing us hell is a consequence of imperialist intervention in our lives. So our struggle is to overturn the system of imperialism, to overturn this entire relationship that we have. And we engage in that struggle here in Philly, we engage in that struggle in Sierra Leone, and everywhere African people are living and struggling, we are engaged in the process to unite and liberate Africa under the leadership of the all-African socialist government, where the government itself is under the control of the workers, not of these Uncle Tom sellouts who don't produce any wealth. And the reason we say that, the reason why we say the workers must be in control is because even after we defeat white power itself, there's a lot of Negroes running around here that would love to be in the place that the white man is in right now. They would love to be in a position to exploit the masses of African workers, right? And sometimes to do so, they would tell you that they're revolutionaries or they represent some type of revolutionary or pro-black type of thing. Or they even sometimes will do it in the guise of a religious banner and things like that. But in the final analysis, any organization that cannot scientifically lay out how their program will overturn all exploitation and oppression in society and in our liberated society, then in the final analysis, it is an organization that has an agenda to become the new exploiters in that society. We are an organization and a movement that is led by a socialist and revolutionary party. NPDOM doesn't require you to be a socialist, but you should know that when you join NPDOM, you are joining the mass organization of a socialist revolutionary party that is clear that the liberation of the African nation must be led by the African working class itself, so that once Africa's liberated, we don't have no little black white mans running around trying to open up the new bank or the new oil refinery to exploit African workers. So that is the struggle that we're involved in right now, and I want people to be conscious of that. And I don't want to leave here before everybody in this room either joins the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement or APDEP, or of course the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which Comrade Harris laid out in a very good way, and which is the first time, literally, in the history of the African Liberation Movement and the general anti-imperialist movement, where the relationship, the correct relationship between white people and the struggles of the liberation of oppressed and colonized people has been defined. Up until the point that the party created the Solidarity movement, you had white people out here that was trying to lead our struggle for liberation. And they tried to do so as a means of reforming the capitalist imperialist system so that their interests would be met at the expense of our long-term interests of liberation. We saying that even as white people want to see an end to capitalism and do get exploited by the ruling class, and they get fed poisonous drugs, and they got contradictions with the white ruling class too. But we saying that the struggle to overturn parasitic capitalism cannot be led by white workers, right? Because we saw why. That man that was driving that train was a white man, and he gets paid very well to drive that train full of our stolen resources, put it on a boat and take it to Europe, where the white people get paid very well to turn that bauxite into steel that white people now have the ability to drive around in the form of Escalades and Cadillacs and all that, right? So the white working class, so to speak, white people in general do not have the ability. They're not positioned politically and socially, historically, in a place to overturn imperialism and parasitic capitalism. They can't do it on their own. They must function under the leadership of the forces that produce all the wealth in the capitalist system itself, which is African workers, the ones digging up that bauxite, the ones that's working for free in these prisons out here in Pennsylvania, African workers all over the world, and oppressed peoples all over the world. The wealth that's produced by our labor and our resources makes it possible for white people in general to enjoy any kind of social gain, democracy, freedom, and wealth in general. So white people cannot lead that struggle. And if they want to end capitalism, then they must unite with the struggle to defeat and destroy imperialism, which can only be led by the colonized peoples ourselves. And that's how it got to be. And the Solidarity movement offers up, for the first time in history, the opportunity for white people to take the right stance, to unite under the leadership of the colonized peoples of the world in the struggle to overturn this vicious social system. So with that said, I want to say join the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement today. And I guess at this point, I'll give it back to the MCs who can tell you how. Uhuru.
Thank you. Already got